Let's talk about what you saw in that last video, wealth inequality in America. This is a screenshot from that video. First of all, that video is from around 2012. Since that time, the disparity has only gotten more extreme. In 2016, the people on the lowest end of the scale actually started to go negative, so that they were no longer holding wealth, they were owing debt. And meanwhile, all of us kept channeling our spending, our purchasing power as fast as we could into the pockets of Mr. Big, Mr. 1%. We were sending our money away to the massive international corporations owned by the 1%. I've made a separate video which explains how this happens. Now let's talk for a minute about those terms, the 1% and the 99%. In 2011, activists were drawing attention to this concept of wealth disparity. Back then, this was a fairly new idea. Many people hadn't realized this gap was so huge, and certainly few people talked about it. As the economy went through the Great Recession, activists began protesting wealth disparity, and a movement called Occupy Wall Street came into being. If you don't know about Occupy Wall Street, there's an excellent video from that time, which I've linked in the Dig Deeper section for this unit. It shows scenes from New York protests and explains the movement and what people were fighting for. But that summer, there were Occupy camps at city halls across the country, including at Los Angeles City Hall. The Occupy movement brought terms like the 1% and the 99% into the vernacular. For the first time, we had a way of talking about this gigantic gap, and that was back in 2011, 2012. Rolling forward to today, although we still use the term 1%, what we really should be talking about is the 0.01%, an almost infinitesimal number of people globally who hold and control a gigantic share of the planetary wealth. So let's focus for a minute on the man. And yes, it's appropriate to say man, because for the most part, these extremely wealthy individuals are men. Mostly white men. Forbes magazine maintains a list of them if you care to see exactly who they are. In 2016, 61 people, mostly white men, owned more than the poorest 3.7 billion people, the bottom half of the world population. By 2018, 2 years later, that was down to a mere 26 people. 26 people who owned more than the poorest 3.8 billion people. An Oxfam report in January 2020 said that if everyone were to sit on their wealth piled up on $100 bills, most of humanity would be sitting on the floor. A middle-class person in a rich country would be sitting at the height of a chair. And the world's two richest men would be sitting in outer space. And then COVID made it all much worse. Millions unemployed, business losses, rent turned into debt hanging over people's heads. A report by Swiss Bank found that billionaires increased their wealth by more than a quarter. 27.5% at the height of the crisis from April to July, just as millions of people around the world lost their jobs or were struggling to get by on government schemes. We have lost purchasing power. We have looming homelessness. We've lost business networks. Some financial press anticipates a K-shaped recovery. What that means is that there could be a split in experiences. One portion of the population will experience a return to so-called normal operations and eventual affluence, but another portion of the population is in dire trouble. And meanwhile, the man, Mr. Big, has profited from COVID-19 and is even wealthier than ever.